Hey there guys, welcome back. At this point, I've completed Tears of the Kingdom, and have managed to finish all the shrines as well as all the light roots. I'm pretty pleased with myself. While I still have some quests and cleanup to do, it's time to start theorizing. And so today I am presenting 7 lingering mysteries about Tears of the Kingdom. Each one of these will probably get a dedicated video further down the line, so consider this a taste of things to come. Needless to say, this video is written using concepts related to mid and late game, so best beware of spoilers. I won't be talking about the main story in general, but knowledge of late game things will help you understand more. And so, without further ado, let's get started. Hey guys, thanks for watching the show. If you like what I do, please give this video a like and subscribe. Make sure to click the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Thanks to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Now, let's begin. Number 1. Why is Hyrule Castle floating? At the start of the game, we see Ganondorf cause the castle to rise up into the sky. That being said, it is never exactly clear why he does this, and more importantly, why it continues to float after his defeat. It could be that there is ancient Zonai technology inside of it that is causing it to rise up, but that wouldn't exactly make sense, given that the castle doesn't match any of the designs of the Zonai ruins. Sure, in the really deep parts of it there are Zonai ruins, but the part that is physically floating in the sky is lacking them. The castle was also created long after their civilization, when things were being completely run by the Hylians, presumably under the children of the first king. It could be that Sheikah technology was built into the castle, such as the Astral Observatory that we fight the Calamity Ganon in. While this technology might have that property, it seems unlikely, but there is much about the Sheikah technology we simply don't know. For example, its power source, which continues to be a mystery in its own right. As for the castle itself, it could be that Ganondorf was completely unaware that the castle had been built over the sealing chamber, and that the act of rising the castle was merely him breaking open the ground so his gloom could pollute the kingdom. Whatever his motives were, the castle is shown to remain floating, and the chasm to the depths still persists even during the ending. That of course only raises more questions as to what might happen with the depths being so clearly open to the surface now. Number 2. Where is all the Sheikah tech? This is probably one of the biggest asked questions in the community, as Breath of the Wild showed that there was lots of Sheikah technology around the kingdom. From divine beasts to towers, to massive pillars buried beneath Hyrule Castle, and not to mention a whole army of destroyed or inactive guardians. And so, the question becomes, where did all of this technology go in such a short amount of time? In what seems to be 5 to 6 years judging from NPCs who have aged. One theory is that Pora and the Sheikah simply repurposed things for their liking, such as the new towers, which clearly show signs of its use. Those 15 towers cannot account for the sheer amount of technology that was spread around the kingdom, even if we assume that shrine interiors were mental simulations and not real space, something that I theorized about long ago, that would still leave a huge amount of material that is now suddenly not. Furthermore, if we assume things like the towers simply retracted, they would have been massive enough in size that they should be visible in the depths. Those 5 massive pillars around the castle in particular should be there, and yet there is no sign of them down there. There are perhaps minor allusions to such things, as under the Great Plateau, there is a large open area that could have been where the final trial took place in the Champions of the Ballad DLC, considering that the entire chamber of the Shrine of Resurrection, the place where Link slept for 100 years, is actually an elevator going down. Then what we see in Tears of the Kingdom doesn't actually make sense if the Sheikah technology had simply been dismantled. And so I ask again, where is it? Number 3. Why were the sky runes not visible? Much of the Zonai civilization was risen into the sky for unknown reasons. While the Great Sky Island and the Temple of Time are explained in Tears of the Kingdom, many other runes all over the skies of Hyrule remain a complete mystery. Some of them may not have even been risen at all. For example, the sky spheres seem to have been something that may have been constructed in the sky first. What is a more interesting thought, though, is the simple question of why these runes were not visible in the sky during Breath of the Wild. Before the game's release, people, including myself, were quick to bring up the cloud barrier from Skyward Sword. That barrier is stated to have hidden the sky world from the surface, and vice versa. Indeed, the dragons ascending into the sky in Breath of the Wild would have supported such a concept. And yet, Tears of the Kingdom presents itself in a way that further disconnects it and Breath of the Wild from the existence of the timeline. In other words, we cannot take for granted at this point that anything from Skyward Sword is true, and that includes the cloud barrier. As such, the mystery returns in full force. How is this stuff hidden from view considering that you can see clear skies in Breath of the Wild? Perhaps it is just bad writing. Number 4. Why is the Depths an inverted overworld? The Depths may actually be the most interesting inclusion in Tears of the Kingdom, by simple virtue that it is largely an inverted version of the overworld map. Certain landmarks reappear as mirrors to what they exist as in the overworld. Things like the dark skeletons reflect that of the bones of the Leviathans. All the same, there are many things within this dichotomy that simply do not make sense. We can see that on the map, artificial structures in the depths are depicted with a brown color. And so we can see what was added by the Zonai, the Yiga, and whoever else was down here exploring. And yet, if the landscape of the depths is that old, then why is it that inverted aspects of man-made alterations on the surface are included into its typography? For example, if the Sheikah built mighty technological wonders after the founding of the Hyrule Kingdom, and then were later told to disband and bury their technology in the mountains, then why would those mountains reflect their modern landscape and not their original form, before the surface had been altered? This is especially true of the Gerudo Highlands, as the Gerudo people were clearly using the surface of the peak to build their statues. Ultimately, we do not know why the depths don't reflect a more ancient state of Hyrule before the more recent modifications to the land. Is it as simple as the developers didn't think this through? Or is there a potential lore explanation behind this? Here's hoping for some DLC that touches on it, but I'm not holding my breath. Number 5. Who are the Bargainer statues? One of the larger mysteries involving the depths is that of the Bargainer statues. At first glance, they might not seem like anything all too important, just a way to cash and pose and get some loot. That is, until you analyze their locations in the depths compared to the surface. In the location of the Great Plateau's Temple of Time, along with the springs of power, wisdom, and courage, these Bargainer statues can be found. Each of these statues, when talked to, refer to the others as brothers. These locations coincide with larger Goddess Hylia statues, not just the small ones that we see in towns, and notably, the ones that we engage in some quest in between both games. More interesting though is that under the large goddess statue in the Forgotten Temple, there is a colossal Bargainer statue. One of the viewers on my streams brought up that the back of the statue has a pig or boar face. That might be the case, but I'm not 100% sold on that. But it is a face nonetheless. All the same, why these statues mirror the goddess statues in those locations is a mystery in itself. But there is one more thing that we really shouldn't overlook. On the Great Plateau, in order to start a quest in the depths involving the Bargainer statues, a smaller Bargainer statue will speak to you directly through the goddess statue in the Temple of Time. It explains that it has been submerged since the Calamity. This ultimately raises the question of who those entities are. and how they are able to speak through these statues. It also raises the question that if these statues are basically just spiritual communicators, perhaps a bit like a radio or walkie-talkie for spirits. Number 6. Who are the Zonai Lords of Animals? The Zonai seem to respect 3 animal aspects in their work: the boar, the owl, and the dragon. We see these over and over again in their ruins. But things go deeper when you investigate the Lomé Labyrinths. In Tears of the Kingdom specifically, when Link interacts with the dragon rings in the labyrinths, a voice will speak to him directly explaining the challenge. Each one of these voices refers to themselves as the Lord of these aspects, the Lord of boars, owls, and dragons. Clearly, these labyrinths are some of the most expansive structures in the entire game, stretching from the sky down to the depths. Surely anyone can see that much effort was put into them, and even the Sheikah repurposed these locations to include 3 shrines for the hero in Breath of the Wild. What is clear though is that the voices are speaking directly to Link when he engages in the trials. And that begs the question if the entities are still around or merely if this is an ancient recording. It's possible, even likely, that these figures will never be explained. Number 7. Who were the dragons? To anybody who has played through the story, it will be obvious that dragons play a key role in the adventure. I'm not going to touch on that exactly, but I will say that the nature of how these dragons come into being is clearly explained in the story. There is of course a new dragon that we get to see in the tutorial Sky Island, but that isn't what I'm focusing on for this mystery. My attention is on the returning 3 dragons we see in Breath of the Wild. The question fundamentally boils down to who these people were before they became dragons, and why the act of becoming a dragon is deemed forbidden by the Zonai. Given the nature of the 3 dragons in question, it really does raise a lot of questions regarding the past lore of the series, now doesn't it? Dinrel is clearly a nod to the goddess Din, Naydra to Nayru, and Farosh to Furore. Could it be that in this continuity, which I again stress seems disconnected from the rest of the timeline, that the golden goddesses who created Hyrule didn't depart the world, but instead changed into dragons? If that were the case, what does it say about the fact that we have seen at least one of them become corrupted in Breath of the Wild? If those 3 dragons were also once mortal, doesn't it imply that they too did the same actions we see in the game for a person to change into a dragon? If so, then doesn't that imply that there may be more than just 7 secret stones? Alas, this will probably never be expanded on. And if the invalidation of creating a champion is an example of how Nintendo will move forward, then even supplementary material won't be able to provide us with reliable answers. Well, there you have it, 7 lingering mysteries from the new game. Again, these mysteries may very well be the result of storylines that were simply not thought out, and as such, we may never get an official answer to them. And now that I've completed the game, I'm going to be shifting back into my normal content focusing on it. I already have a small series of videos in the works, and so you can expect regular content from me for a bit. These 7 mysteries might get made into more in-depth ones as well. So tell me, which one of these did you find most interesting? Perhaps you have your own mystery that you want to share. I look forward to reading about that in the comments below. This channel is supported by Patreon. Patreon is the backbone of many content creators. Given that I am still small here on YouTube, your support would be greatly appreciated. As for the people who have already pledged, thank you so very much. It means a great deal. If you would like to join up, you will not only get your name in every single episode, but you will gain access to my Discord server where you can talk to me more directly about future topics. Especially with the new game, there is a lot on my mind, and I simply love talking about this stuff. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. Be safe and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.